As someone who has experienced a lot of trauma, who is a coach that supports people who have experienced trauma, and is a parent, I have periods, you'll be very surprised to hear this. I have periods of overwhelm, stress, and social burnout. The mental load of parenting on top of everything else is huge. As well as, it was 15 years from when I first experienced trauma, probably longer actually, if I'm honest, and for 15 years I suppressed everything. So I naturally created these habits and patterns that were very unhealthy. And now that I've been doing my healing for about 10 years, it still sometimes shows up, right? Sometimes there are still patterns that show up that add to overwhelm, stress, burnout. And if I rewind it, before I started my healing, I used to thrive on drama. Not in a way where I would actively go out and create drama. Like, I'm not talking about math style. I'm talking, it was more, I was so much more comfortable if there was drama in my life. Like, if something was wrong, then that made me feel more comfortable. So, someone, and I remember specifically a couple of times where someone was like, "How are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, good." And then as soon as I said that, there was this discomfort of like, "Oh, yeah, like I am good. Like, there's nothing wrong. There's no problems, no drama, no conflict." And that was really, really uncomfortable. So naturally, because I was uncomfortable in that state, I would do something more often than not subconsciously to cause some kind of drama or conflict. And then it was like, oh, okay, I can relax. I can breathe easy because there's something wrong and that's where I'm comfortable. It's the opposite now, right? Like, if there is drama or conflict or disease in my life, oh, I'm so acutely aware of it. And it is just so uncomfortable for me. So uncomfortable. And what I've noticed, because we're human, right? Because we're human, that when we don't express ourselves, when we don't say what's on our mind, when we suppress what's going on, we are more likely to experience conflict. And when I say conflict, it could be an argument, it could be a disagreement, it could be just this energetic exchange of, that discomfort. And I know that you know what I'm talking about, where sometimes someone will be like, "What's wrong?" You're like, "Nothing." Because logically, you can't think of anything that's wrong, but you don't feel great. Like, something feels off. And you might have conflict with your partner. There could be conflict with friends. There could be conflict with your kids. Hello, school holidays. Or it could be internal conflict. You can absolutely have conflict with yourself about different things. And so, really, I'm talking about any type of conflict with a human, which includes yourself. When we have that level of conflict or a level of conflict, there's usually something underneath it, right? Of course, sometimes the conflict is because of something that someone said, or an argument or something that's happened. That can of course cause conflict. And like I gave the example before, we can create conflict subconsciously because that's what we're more comfortable with. So there is that. Again, just like completely lost my train of thought here. So sometimes it is due to a conversation or an action. Other times it's because of what's happening internally that you haven't expressed. A thought, something that hasn't been said, a feeling that you have that you either haven't expressed or haven't acknowledged or don't even know is there, right? And this discomfort plays out for everyone differently. Some people might experience anxiety, some might get angry, some might feel sad, some might just feel a bit snooty. Yeah, I don't even know that's a word. But you know that things don't feel great. And when things don't feel great, that's a level of conflict. As I said, whether it's with someone else or with yourself. I feel like, or my experience is, this is absolutely heightened if you're a parent. like really heightened if you're a parent. And sometimes it can sneak up on you, right? So when you're a parent, you're not only holding your own life, you're also the sole person for a little person or little people. And the mental load of that is huge. And this is something I remember when Archer was only a few months old, or maybe about 6 months old, and I was up at my parents' place. Chris was at home and I'd had a few nights with just horrible, horrible sleep. And I woke up one day and I was so depressed. I was so sad. And it was the first time in a really long time, wow, that I had thought about suicide. I thought about ending my life again. And I wasn't suicidal, but I had a thought. It was like, oh, it would just be easier if I wasn't here. And I was just so sleep deprived. And I now, since becoming a parent, understand why sleep or lack of sleep deprivation, not lack of sleep deprivation, why sleep deprivation is a form of torture. And I feel like a lot of parents will understand me when I say that. And I went for a walk. I was hosting a breathwork that day. And I went for a walk in the morning and I pretty much cried the whole time. I was just crying and I was tired. And I'm like, how am I going to, you know, pull it together? And I did. I pulled it together and I had a breathwork and it was amazing. But I booked in to see my psychologist and I hadn't seen her for a few years. And I went to the doctor first to get a referral. And I went through this assessment because, a mental health plan is an assessment. And at the end of it, she said, you know, because of this, your diagnosis is postnatal depression. And when I went to my psych, she said, do you think you have postnatal depression? I said, no, I don't have postnatal depression. I'm depressed because of the extra layer that parenting is added, but it's not because I'm a parent. And really, it was sleep deprivation. But we had this really, and it was probably the first time that I'd acknowledged it for myself, a really honest conversation around the mental load of being a parent. And more often than not, not always, but more often than not, a mother. And again, I don't want to, I'm not saying that fathers aren't important and don't play their part. And sometimes roles are reversed, but statistically, more often than not, it's a mum. And you think about the mental load, it's the routine. The routine kills me. So making sure they've got enough sleep, whether they're good sleepers, whether they're not good sleepers, food, feeding them at the right times, feeding them enough, feeding them appropriate, screen time, doing all their washing, making sure they're warm, making sure they're not too hot, making sure, they've drunk enough, making sure that like all of these things on top of yourself, right? There is so much to think about when you're a parent, and especially when they're little. Not, no, not especially. There is always so much to think about when you're a parent. I think what you think about and the challenges that you have are different when they're little compared to when they're older, right? In their first, I don't know, I'm just putting this number out there, 5, 6 years, they are solely dependent on you. You are their person. You are there to help them regulate emotions, help them dress, help feed them, do all of that. Then from, I don't know, 6, 7, I'm making these numbers up, right? But this is kind of what I feel. From 6 to 7, they're a little bit more autonomous. You might be able to leave them at home for a little while by yourself or by themselves, and they can get their own food and they can clean their room and they can do things for themselves. Then when they get older, they start, when we go through puberty, there's a whole nother challenge. And then if they start dating, there's a whole nother challenge. Then when they get to the age where they start going to parties or going out, there's a whole nother challenge, right? So parenting challenges or parenting responsibilities are always there. They just change over time. And I'm in the thick of it. And back then I was like super, super in the thick of it. A 6 month old, a 2 year old, it's like, you know, there's a lot going on right there. And we were just talking about this mental load. And she's like, well, sometimes, and Chris is great. Chris cooks dinner most nights, not every night, but most nights. And often while I'm bathing the kids, he'll do the dishes. Sometimes it's reversed, but at nighttime, he really helps out. But what I found, and especially during this period, it was the little things that unless I asked him to do, he didn't necessarily think about. And that's also on me as well, right? Like I just took this responsibility of trying to be not a perfect parent, but, trying to be on top of everything. And then social media doesn't help. Other people don't help in the sense of they can make you question yourself or feel worse about what you're doing. And just simply having this conversation with her around the mental load of parenting, I was like, wow, like there's so much in this. I also have a stepson, and that's another layer of complexity as well because I will not be called like it's full stop. That's adds another layer of complexity. Step parents will understand this. We don't have my stepson all the time, so he's 50-50 between us and his mum. And for me, that is, it's like this really interesting dynamic in the sense of he's not with us all the time and he has a like great relationship with his mum, and I'm not his mum. While he's under our house, it's he's part of our family, but I'm still not his mum, and that's can bring up some stuff internally as well. But what I've noticed is before being a parent, but even especially since becoming a parent, 1 minute you can be fine and the next minute you're not. Right? I can be playing with my kids and everything's great. And just sneakily, things kind of build up. And then one thing happens and I just snap. And I see it in my kids, not the snapping part, but you see them hold it together during the day. And if they've been to childcare, they hold it together and they get home and they're great. But as soon as one thing doesn't go the way that they want it to do, the way they want it to, tantrum. And it's like, I can look at them and be like, oh my God, you poor little thing. Like, I know what you're going through. And I know that you have no idea what to do with all of these emotions and feelings that you're having. And I can be compassionate to them most of the time. But then sometimes, if I'm overwhelmed or if I'm overloaded, their tantrum sets me off. Then again, if we are spoken to poorly, it's like that can be quite triggering. It's like just, and I think again, it comes into how we were parented and how we were raised and how we feel about ourselves and things that people say. It's just a lot, right? There is a lot in it. And I know that I've just spoken a lot about parenting, but it doesn't matter whether you're a parent or not. Fundamentally, if you are a human, if you're a human and you don't do this one thing, then you are more than likely going to experience moments of unnecessary conflict with yourself, with your friends, with your partners, at work, who knows. But what this thing is space. Space. Space to do what you need. Meditate, go for a walk, catch up with friends, go to the gym, punch something, play music, whatever it is. And when you've focused on healing and self-development, you increase this, develop, not increase, you develop, increase as well. You develop this level of self-awareness that kind of is insane, right? It's like every little thing you see, you're aware of. And you also see it in other people. So I find people that have spent time healing and working on themselves are very good at reading other people because they have the self awareness to be able to see what's happening. And when you have that, creating space for what you need can be easy. Not necessarily easy to create the space, but easy to identify what you need. When you haven't done the work, there I feel like it can be harder to identify what you need. It can also be harder to identify that you need space. Some people, and we see it through society, we soldier on, we keep pushing, we burn out, we blow up, we start again. We go, we go, we go, we blow up, we start again. And you can see it in some people where it's, they can yell at someone or say something quite aggressively, and then 2 minutes later they're fine. And that was their output. Like that was what they needed to, get everything out of their system. For me, I know that I need space to journal, especially. But with that usually comes breath work and meditation as well. And it's just moment, it's space to be with myself. I also need to exercise. If I don't exercise, I'm a real grump and you don't want to be around me if I haven't exercised for a while. And then sometimes I need space to be with people, like in person. Sometimes I need space to be away from people. Sometimes I need space to be out in nature. Sometimes that space includes other people, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's just space. The challenge with this can be when there is, especially if we're talking about a relationship here, but not always, or it doesn't have to be, when one person needs space and has done that work and can identify what they need, and the other person hasn't and they don't understand that, it can create more conflict. Right. So the other day, and I put a post up last week around just having a really full week with my family on the back of a really busy social month and it being shit weather. So we couldn't get outside, we couldn't do anything. And I know that I was a little bit out of sorts, not grumpy, but I was just flat. And Chris, my partner, was like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, I'm just, he's like, "You something?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I just need some space." And when I say that, space to me means I just need to go and meditate. I need to go and do a breath work. I need to go and journal. Not, I want nothing to do with everyone, but also for a little bit, I just want nothing to do with anyone. I just want some space to myself, not be touched, not be needed, not be mummed at. And sometimes and I think it also depends on where he's at, right? So some days I can say that and he's totally fine. And then another time I might say it and he almost takes it personally. It's like, what, you don't want to be around us? It's like, no, it's absolutely got nothing to do with that. If I didn't want to be around you, I wouldn't be with you, but that doesn't take away from my needs. And so if you're looking to avoid or minimize conflict, create some space for yourself. This space is where you can purge, you can like get everything that's going on internally out. It might be even just moving and getting some energetic release, but it's just about coming back to yourself. That's also not easy all the time. I used to be super uncomfortable with space or time by myself, whereas now I crave it and I need it. And if I don't have it at least a few times a week, I really notice the impact. And this is part of the reason that have created parenting with trauma, because all parents at some stage just need space, just need a space where they can exhale, where they can let it out, where they don't have to feel like they have to have it all together, right? If you add in the mental load and the pressure and the overwhelm that parenting can create, it can become a lot. I know that I am more reactive than I would like to be. And I also know that when I'm reactive, it's because I haven't had space. So, parenting with trauma is a 5 week, really supportive, confidential group coaching experience where we come together once a week for 5 weeks, where I support and coach and guide you in different stages and phases of parenting. You don't have to be in the thick of it with little kids. Your kids might be older, but it's, as I said, it still comes with challenges, right? So think of this as an opportunity for you to have guaranteed space for 5 weeks, 90 minutes every Monday evening for 5 weeks, where you just have space to be, to think, to feel, to release, to share if you want, and also be surrounded by other people. As I said, I put up this post last week around what I needed after having a week, like a really intense week with the family. And so many people messaged me and were like, "Thank you for sharing this because this is exactly how I've been feeling." But no one says it because they're worried about what people will think. This space, parenting with trauma, is a space for you to come and be and not worry about saying something where you're going to be judged or criticized or anything like that. This space is important. Parents need a space where they can feel comfortable and safe to share what they think and how they feel without like being judged, without feeling like they have to be perfect, without feeling like there's something wrong with them. And for me, there's been so many times where I'm like, there's something wrong with me. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I do this? Because I have a history of working with people in trauma. Parenting with trauma is a space for parents to come. It's not a course, right? I don't want you to be like, oh, this is another thing to add to my to-do list. There aren't modules or workbooks or things that you need to do between. Think of this, it is a support group. Fundamentally, it's coaching, but it's a support group, right? It is a space where you just get to come and be and share your experiences. Even just like speaking it is like, oh, this is needed. This is so needed right now. And I know for so many parents coming off the back of school holidays, it's like, oh my God, I need this space. Like, I just need some time away from everyone. Parenting with trauma is that space for you. So, if you would love to join us, we kick off on Monday, the 4th of May. So, in a couple of weeks. If the link to join is in the show notes below, but if you go to jackierogash.com/parenting with trauma, all of the information is in there. You can sign up through that, and we kick off on the 4th. So, rather than feeling like you need to do it all alone, rather than soldiering on, create this space for yourself. You're going to avoid so much conflict, so much tension, and just have a moment to yourself. Even if you come and just listen, it's like no one's touching you, no one's needing you. This is time dedicated to yourself. And sometimes, unfortunately, unless we have something locked in our calendar, we don't create that space. Think of this as locked and loaded, right? We're locked in, we're ready for 5 weeks, we're coming together, and I would love to support you in there.